Hello and welcome to the first episode of my new podcast called After School. I'm your host, William Duvall. After School is a podcast where a guest and I talk about anything that you learned in class that you were so fascinated with that you wanted to know more. Today's topic is about a person's dialogue and its varieties. Today's topic comes from a video that I saw in class of a woman who is presenting a TED Talk about 3 different ways to speak English. While I was watching and hearing her speak, it was so fascinating because all my life I had thought that there was just English. But there is so much more than just English, and even more than just 3 ways to speak English. I'm here with my best friend who I went to school with for 12 years. He is also a fellow IB student, and his name is Etienne de Villiers.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome. Okay, so Etienne has already seen the video as well, so let's just dive in. What do you think of the video?
So I actually really enjoyed it, and I thought the ideas that the speaker brought forward were really interesting, especially the different forms of English that she talks about. Like, for example, the ones that she uses with her friends, the ones that she uses with her coworkers and at work, and the one that she uses with her family.
Now, I will throw this at you. Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever considered that to play a role?
I mean, not necessarily as important. I didn't think of it as that important of a role, but after this video, it really put it into the foreground that they are actually very important and you don't really notice them unless you're really thinking about it.
Yeah, you got a new perspective on it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so do you believe that people change the way they speak depending on their environment and or who they're talking to?
I do, but I also believe it depends more on the situation that they're in and who's involved in their conversation. Like, say, for example, you're talking with a group of friends of yours, and a teacher walks by or asks one of them a question. You'll probably notice that the tonality that they use with you versus with their teacher varies depending on what the conversation is.
Yes, and it's all, even you can see it in writing too. If you're writing a text message to your friend, you're gonna be like, yo, what up? You want to hang? You're gonna use slang, and you're not really gonna put that much focus into it. But when you're writing an email to a teacher, you're like, dear madam, da da da, please move, or something. It's gonna be
Yeah.
formal. It's not gonna be, yo, what the head on? Can you change my grade, please? No. It's not.
Yeah,
You won't do that. It's
of course,
exactly
definitely.
your wording and dialogue is sort of changing.
Yeah.
But now, have you seen someone change their tone or wording depending on the environment?
I have actually. So, quick little backstory. Both of my parents are from South Africa, and they've been in the US for almost 20 years now. And my mother has been an English teacher for a while, and she's actually lost some of her South African accent. She still does have an accent. She doesn't speak like an American, but it's much subtler. And I've noticed that when she's with a group of friends of hers that are also South African, her accent becomes more becomes more noticeable, and you can see that she I guess tries to fit in using her old way of talking and her old accent, which I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, and you can really see it because, you can say that her with her old friends is sort of her showing her real identity. And when
Well, I wouldn't
she's,
necessarily say her real identity, but maybe her older identity.
yeah, I would, yeah, or just like her identity culturally.
Yeah,
You could
definitely.
say that. And when she's around with other people or at school, she's sort of portraying a less sort of international culture. Like
Mm,
she has that international experience, and she's very
yeah,
cultured.
definitely.
Um, she uses great phrases like "oh my hats" and other great phrases that when someone from the U.S. is like, what the heck is that? What
Yeah, the
it's
sayings that she uses are more UK and South Africa.
yeah,
So
and she's a reason because the UK was played a factor in
they actually
South
colonized
Africa. Yeah,
after the Dutch did.
exactly. Okay. Why would one want or if ever even feel needed to change their tone or dialogue?
I feel like when one would do that more to fit in with the group that they're in, people generally people in general actually have more of a need to fit in so that they're not judged, since our society is already as super judgmental, and people will do whatever they can to fit in, even if it means changing basically who they are through the way they speak, so that they can fit in.
Yeah, and I can attest to that or give evidence to that. Whenever I'm at home or with any of my friends, I'm semi myself. So I'm myself with my friends, and then with adults, I'm more a little bit proper. But when I go to Canada, man, when I'm with my grandmother, my father, any of them in that family, I am a different person. I do the dishes like without someone yelling at me to do the dishes. I which isn't a good example for language, but like even when I speak, just the grammar is good. Like I use the right wording. I don't say um, I and my guest as I would say normally. But like it's just so weird because after before seeing this video, I never thought of it, and then after seeing this video, I was like, holy cow! I'm
Mm.
like so many different people at
Yeah,
one,
definitely.
so many different
It
personalities in
shows the
one
different
body.
facets of someone's identity.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, I was doing a little bit of research because I do that for school. And I saw that in an article by ALTA, they claim that a speaker accentuates speech differences often in order to establish dominance or power. What are your thoughts on that claim?
I can see where they're coming from, but overall, I actually disagree with that claim. I believe, like as I said earlier, that people change their dialect mainly to fit in. And an example of this would be actually in France, in the suburbs, which are filled with people who have less money and less to work with. Each suburb has their own specific dialect and different variation of French. And if you want to fit into those different specific suburbs, you're going to have to adopt their dialect and kind of lose the base French, because that can mean the difference between you keeping your car or not.
And yeah, and just it's sort of yeah. I mean, I can see when you said keeping your car or not. I sort of thought that's the suburbs sort of showing their dominance in a way. They're
That's a valid point,
uh,
because if you don't necessarily adopt their dialect as soon as possible, you'll probably be considered more as an outsider and probably be somewhat ostracized. Whereas if you try and fit in and at least make the effort to try and speak the way they do, you'll probably be more accepted and find a group to kind of
and
be
yeah,
with.
and I would say that people who use higher vocabulary in the world that they get seen as better educated and get more opportunities in life.
Mm, kind of going on to a theme of jealousy, maybe.
Yeah, it is so weird how what language can do and
Yeah, it
how you
is.
speak.
You don't
And
really think about that as much as you would, as you
uh,
actually should.
yeah, and I mean, a great example of someone changing what their thoughts on other people are because of language, and you can obviously see this is if you see someone who they look normal when you're having a conversation with them, but then they sort of drop the bomb of being having sick or being have cancer, and you can see someone's tone will entirely change. They'll become sort of conserved
Mm,
and definitely
yeah,
concerned, but very like in a box. Like
yeah, definitely.
their words are limited.
And another example, actually, from a video, from a clip of one of Trevor Noah's comedy stand-up routines, was him talking about, and this is again going back to South Africa because South Africa rules. He was saying that in South Africa, there's obviously the two different kind of ethnic groups. There's the whites and the blacks, which sounds racist, but it honestly is not. It's just different differences in culture and in languages. The black Africans don't actually speak, at least as fluently, the two languages that most of the whites speak, which is Afrikaans and English. Afrikaans is basically an older form of Dutch for those who don't know. But when like a white African is talking to a black African, you'll notice that sometimes their tone changes or they talk slower, and it's not to be racist. Some people might, and it maybe not even intentionally, but more often than not, it's not actually to be racist. It's actually to make themselves more understood. And since the black Africans speak so many other different languages, their accent when they speak Afrikaans or English is very different. So they may not actually understand what you're saying in those circumstances. So if you maybe even adopt their tone and their accent, you might actually get your point across much more easily. So say for example, you want to get gas because in South Africa you'll have someone who actually puts in the gas for you. You don't do it yourself. Say a white African is getting gas from a black African. The black African may not understand how much they're asking for, and so if you try and either slow down the way you're talking or try and speak with more of their accent in subtle ways, maybe you'll get your what you want across easier. So
Yeah, and I mean, even in the whole black community in Africa, there's so many different languages within that.
yeah, I think,
It's,
don't quote me on this, but I think in South Africa there's at least 20 languages spoken by the black
oh,
Africans just alone.
oh
So,
my
and that's not even
god.
counting the other countries in Africa.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, that's nuts. But okay. Now, I was talking about Trevor Noah. Um, in Trevor Noah's book Born a Crime, which is about the South African comedian's life, there's a scene where Trevor and his friend Teddy were shoplifting. Trevor's friend was arrested, while Trevor was able to get away. Days later, Teddy's parents came over to talk with Trevor's mom, and when he was asked if he knew anything, he said, "What?" And he said he played dumb. "No, that's crazy. I can't believe it. Teddy? No." Why do you think he changed his tone?
Well, this is kind of a more obvious case, but I think it's mainly to hide that he was probably involved with the shoplifting scenario and that Teddy kind of took the fall for it. But I think that his change in tonality actually might have given him away,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny because if you know anyone and you know that they're lying, more often than not, their voice will go higher when they're lying. So
And it's sort
it's
of
interesting.
it's a language sort of truth telling. Oh wait, no, hold on. A lie detector, but a language lie detector.
Linguistic lie detector, yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I mean, even as a person, if I'm looking at someone, I can tell if they're lying by either the way that they're looking at me or looking away from me, or the way that they're speaking. If
Yeah.
they're speaking in a really high voice, they're probably lying.
Or they
Because
might even go in a deeper voice to try and compensate for knowing that people talk in a higher voice when they're lying.
and even just so you can relate back to ALTA's claim, they may try to speak in a lower tone to me seem more dominant or have more power than the other person that's questioning them.
Yeah, definitely.
Super weird. All right, that's all for this episode. Thank you for joining. If you want to hear more, please let me know because of the first episode, and this was lots of fun to make. Thank you to Etienne,
My
my
pleasure.
dude.
Thank you for having me.
And that is all. Have a great afternoon.